arrest me on a warrant that was literally applied for the day before. So September 28th, they applied for my arrest warrant. September 29th, it was signed, and on September 30th, they arrested me. So there's plenty here in these 32 pages of handwritten documents or handwritten notes that I've accrued over the last 4 days that will expose the FBI for its lies and corruption and hyperbole and conjecture, because they have a narrative and they need somebody to fit into it. And because I was embarrassing them, I guess they decided it was time to shut me up.
Well, hopefully you could mail that stuff out, and then I can contact Helene, and then I can put it up on my blog if you'd like.
Oh, well, Chauncey, you know we can't do that because, see, the D.C. court has put in place a protective order that prevents me from distributing any of my discovery, and that's the reason why I'm not allowed to see any of the footage, because I'm such a risk of dissemination and will harm the government's case. You know, the constitutionally protected right of the government to prosecute citizens. Oh, yeah, no, that doesn't exist. But they've put in place a protective order that prevents me from even seeing the evidence in my case without supervision. And so that's why I said I've only been able to review the stuff that they've granted me mercy to be able to see the little bit that they've seen, but there's much, much more. And, of course, they use the excuse that, you know, the 14 months since January 6th just hasn't been enough time for them to get their act straight, but yet they've arrested over 700 people, but they can't provide anybody with their evidence yet because they're still going through it. You know, it's a lot of work for them.
Unbelievable. You know, as I'm listening to the real story of exactly what happened to you, I'm thinking about the woman that you rendered first aid to during the protest. Can you tell us about that situation, please?
Yeah, so basically me and one other member, the actual body person for our protectee, were there on the outside of the Capitol, standing alone, you know, kind of observing everything, you know, and we were on the non-violent side, the non-staged violent side. And the reason why I say that is because as I explained to my fellow inmates what actually happened that day, because, you know, like most Americans, they just watch the news and they believe what they say, and they don't even really pay attention, and they think, oh, yeah, there was a riot there. Yeah, I said, well, here, let me show you a picture of the Capitol. All right, let me show you a picture of all the video that you see. Is this little tiny area right here? Well, see, there's a massive building there, and everywhere else on that massive 4-acre grounds that makes up the U.S. Capitol was pretty much peaceful. People meandering around like a county fair, talking to law enforcement, you know, no trouble, people standing on the stairs, singing, chanting, and everything like that. So that's where me and the other individual, that's where we were. We were meandering around, making sure that there weren't any problems, because, again, that was the purpose of us being there, is to make sure that if any troublemakers or rabble-rousers tried to hurt the people there, that we would step in and stand in the gap. Right. It wasn't until much later, probably around 4:00, 4:15, we finally received a call and said, hey, there's people injured on the back side here. So we started to maneuver along to that back side. And as soon as we broke the corner on the side where everybody has seen all the footage of all the violence and the clashing with the police, I mean, we immediately got, you know, whiffs of tear gas, you know, heard, you know, flashbangs, everything. And so as I'm moving up towards the crowd, near the front of the riot, the advancing riot line, we noticed this woman laying in literally the corner. So you've got kind of like a 2 or 3 foot granite wall. If you're familiar with the way the Capitol is designed, it kind of has like a porch type wall. Well, she was basically pinned up against that wall, huddled down on the ground in pretty much a fetal position, crying and screaming. And so as I look down, the riot line is advancing on her. So there's actual video of it, and you can see that I'm basically holding the riot line back and saying, hey, there's a woman down here, which they were just going to trample right over, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm able to get them to stop, and then we help her up and escort her out. But I mean, that really was, once we got her out of the way, I turned around and that's what it was. It was Americans being hit with batons, being shot. I was shot in the neck. I was sprayed with chemicals. They were flashbanging us, and these are totally unprotected American citizens. They're in regular clothes with hats or no hats, with maybe a flag or two. Now, I was in full body armor because we were dressed to provide security. And so I was able to get up there and do the best that I could to prevent some of this violence on behalf of the Capitol Police. And, that night when I got back to my RV, my forearm was literally swole up because these guys were literally swinging at unarmed, unprotected heads of American citizens with batons. Now, that is attempted murder because these batons are designed to crush skulls. And so, and a lot of this video is coming out. If you look at the case of Victoria White, who I think Joseph McBride is her attorney, they're getting this footage released, and the narrative story is, the other lady, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but, she died of an overdose from Adderall. But yet now video has come out showing that she was beaten to death by Capitol Police. And Victoria White was right in that exact same area where she was also beaten by Capitol Police. I'm now in here in the Pinellas County Jail with a 28-year-old combat veteran from the Air Force who just wrote an open letter describing what he saw that day and how Americans were beaten by police, to the point where there's blood everywhere, some of them unconscious. And this is why the video from that day is deemed by the federal government as highly sensitive. It has nothing to do with national security. It has nothing to do with, the Capitol building is so secret we can't even allow you to see the footage or anything. No, it's because all the video that they have is exculpatory to the 700-plus people that have been arrested as domestic terrorists. And that's really the point that I'm in, the point of why I'm in here, because I don't have to be here. There's legal avenues where I could very easily, be out of here. I'm trying to force this to trial. I could take a plea deal. They would be happy to get me to sign a non-disclosure agreement and this go away on time served and a couple misdemeanors. But I have told them under no circumstances will I accept a plea deal, because I'm going to force them to go to trial, and I'm going to force the federal government to adhere to the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution that gives every American the right to a public trial in front of a jury of their peers, to be able to face their accusers, and to be able to gather compulsory witnesses in their defense. And that's exactly what my case is all about.
Jeremy, thank you so much, for standing up, which I know that you always have done. We've had many conversations. I keep you in my prayers every day. Man, I love you, and thank you, for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing the truth, because we're really understanding now what's really going on versus what they're trying to push in the media, and it's really sad what they're doing to people like you, veterans, and like you said, the beating of Americans. It's just unconscionable to me. And also, I want to, mention, my heart goes out to Alicia Babbitt, who lost her life being shot by the security guy for Vice President Pence. She was unarmed and she was shot. And
Absolutely.
He wasn't charged. He got away. They didn't want to release his picture, but since we were able to get his picture, we blasted all over the place, But it's sad where our country has come to now, where the country is arresting American patriots.
Yeah, I mean, we're living in a totalitarian state, a police state, and the bad thing for them is that the surveillance network and grid of everyone having a tracking device in their hand is backfiring on them, because everyone does have video of that day. I mean, there were at least a few 100,000 people on the Capitol ground that day. There were at least at least 1.5 million, 2 million people at the rally that day. And you can only lie so much when everybody has a camera and everybody has a footage. And what they attempted to do early on was frighten everybody into staying quiet. That's exactly why all these arrests have like 20, 30, 40 federal agents with cars around every single corner, helicopters and everything, because they wanted to scare the American people into just staying quiet. Don't show the footage that you have, because if you do, you'll be a terrorist, and then we'll come get you. But you know what? I think my case and many of the other cases there are a few of us that are fighting these guys, and as we do fight them, exposures are made, and it makes people realize, wait, what is going on here? For example, on January 6th, we had a rally outside of the jail here on my behalf. A couple hundred people were present, and an Antifa punk showed up with explosive devices to bomb my rally. So the sheriff's department, of course, because they're all there surveilling me, apparently, even though I'm in jail, but they're surveilling my crowd. They've got undercover officers, as admitted by the Pinellas County Sheriff in a press conference that he had the next day. They arrest this kid. So they arrest this kid. He's got an explosive device, which was identified as such by the Hillsborough County Bomb Squad. And so the sheriff has a big press conference the next day, which anybody, if you go to JeremyBrownDefense.com, I believe that they have a link up to Sheriff Gualtieri's press conference. And he literally has the nerve to claim, well, they didn't know whether or not that guy was a supporter of mine or if he was against. They just didn't have enough information. I mean, he had Antifa stickers all over his helmet and Antifa symbols all over his little planning notes that he had. But, yeah, they just couldn't tell whether the 22-year-old Garrett Smith was on Jeremy Brown, the 20-year retired Army Green Beret side, or if he was against it. They couldn't put that investigation portion of it together. But yet this kid, who was literally arrested in the act of attempting to bomb law enforcement, women, children on law enforcement property, was released on his own recognizance. And while he's released, I sit in here because I had a sign on my door that I wrote by hand that wasn't even part of their case until they realized that they didn't have anything else to hold me on. And they got a judge that is a very sensitive guy, apparently, because he really feels he blatantly feels that handwritten sign was a dangerous threat to the entire world, and that's why I need to be held in maximum security. But this is the juxtaposition. I mean, if you are an American citizen who shows up to a First Amendment protected rally to speak your mind, you're a terrorist. But if you're a terrorist that shows up to bomb people at First Amendment protected rallies, well, then you deserve to be released on your own recognizance, because certainly you didn't really mean it. Now they're trying to claim that, the explosives that they recovered in his backpack and that the grenades and everything they found at his house that they reported in the media, actually they were just fireworks. And so that's the reason why they released him. It's completely ridiculous. And so as Americans see and learn what is going on, more and more are standing up. But I implore you all to stand up quicker, okay? Because this is not just another episode of your favorite political talk show. This is not just something that you read in a newspaper. This is coming to your doorstep. It's coming to a neighbor's house near you. And if you don't stand up and say, look, we're not a country of secret police. We're not a country of secret evidence. We're not a country of star chambers. We're a country of protected rights where citizens should be protected from their government, then it's only going to get worse. And my case is a prime example. I mean, the reason I have 32 pages of handwritten notes is because on almost every single report, there's a fact here that's wrong, there's a fact there that's wrong. I mean, literally, investigator notes transcribed during the actual interview, once they're put onto a 302 form, are totally different statements. I mean, and of course we saw this during the Russian hoax, right? Altered 302s, altered emails, tampered evidence. The government has a legal obligation to clear you if they know of exculpatory evidence, and yet They've provided me with this exculpatory evidence, and yet there's no